Welcome to the Bub Report. It is time for those of us in North America to turn our clocks forward to adjust to daylight savings time for 2021. This week on our program, we reflect on the geopolitical influence and socialist legacy of the Grenada Revolution 41 years later. In the decades before 1979, Caribbean socialism became a significant force in the Western Hemisphere. The socialist movement began with Fidel Castro's Cuban Revolution in the 1950s, to Cheddi Jagan's People's Progressive Party's victory in Guyana's elections in 1953, the latter of which prompted British military intervention. In the years before NJM's rise in Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago witnessed a major Black Power uprising in 1970, and Jamaica twice elected a socialist prime minister in the person of Michael Manley and his People's National Party in 1972 and 1976, events which once again prompted support for a violent reaction from Western governments. Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord, who had, like Michael Manley, been educated in Britain and shaped by its anti-colonial, anti-war, and socialist movements, was clear that Grenada was part of an anti-colonial and anti-Western Caribbean context.
In the island world do have their own strong views on the question of which of the two worlds, socialist or capitalist, tend to back them on particular causes. You look at Angola, Mozambique, you look at Vietnam, Cambodia, or you look at the Palestinian struggle today, and I think it is fair to say that very often there is a convergence of views, between one world and the non-aligned bloc. I do not see this as a conspiracy. I see this as being an affinity that is based on analysis that is made by different countries. But we define imperialism in a very specific way.
And that is?
Well, that is to say the countries, the governments that back their multinational, transnational corporations with the use or the threat of force. That would be our major concern. It's not so much, in other words, a question of whether or not a particular country has multinational corporations that are investing in particular areas. It is a question of to what extent are they willing to go to back the interests of those corporations.
Today on the Bub Report, we ask whether or not socialist values are still relevant in a Caribbean space increasingly characterized by the rise and expansion of private enterprise and unfettered capitalist interests. We are also joined by a cadre of trade unionists from Grenada to continue the conversation started last week with Senator Chester Humphrey on the current industrial relations climate in the country.
If an employer says to you, in the context in which we are speaking, and in the context in which this is unfolding, that look, my revenue has been cut substantially, right? I have obligations that I must meet, not by virtue of the fact that I have a legal compulsion to help these people, but morally, they are citizens. They are looking towards the state for help in a very grave situation. All I'm asking you to do is to hold a while. I will pay you. It's not that I won't pay you. I think that's listen to me. I think that that's a reasonable request. Mm-hmm. And if I was still in the trade union movement, I will go to my members and persuade them to go along with that request.
Apart from the current protracted dispute with the government, which calls for an immediate 4% pay increase, agreed upon between both parties, the island's two major public sector unions are holding general elections in this period as well. The GUT recently elected a new executive, and the Public Workers Union will be holding its internal elections on March 17th. We will be speaking with all three candidates vying for the presidency of the union. We welcome our guests, Marvin Andel, the outgoing president of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Arthur Pear, second vice president of the Public Workers Union, Amilcar Santanan, of the University of the West Indies Caribbean Socialist Conference, Rachel Roberts, the current president of the PWU, and Brian Grimes, former public relations officer of the Grenada Public Workers Union. This is the Bub Report. Thanks for joining us. Unmute my mic. A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to Daylight Savings Time. It is my favorite time of the year here in North America, but we are, of course, marking a grim milestone with respect to COVID-19. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 to be a public health pandemic. Since then, the international community recorded more than 118 million cases and counting, with more than 2.6 million fatalities and counting. It was actually this week, 1 year ago, that countries and cities in the Western Hemisphere started to feel the real impact of the pandemic, with New York City as one of the major ground zeros for uncontrolled deaths. Today, we here at the Bub Report remember Grenadians and other Caribbean nationals in North America and Europe who perished at the hands of this highly infectious and contagious disease. May they rest in peace, and may their memories be a blessing. As we segue into the conversation on the Grenadian Revolution 41 years later, I try to imagine what it might have been like working as an independent, unbossed, and unbought, fearless journalist under the People's Revolutionary Government. As someone with a fiercely independent streak who believes in and defends a free and independent press, I can't imagine being able to freely function with independence under the People's Revolutionary Government. It is in fact a lesson that Tillman Thomas, Leslie Pear, and Alistair Hughes learned so well for their roles in publishing both the Grenada newsletter and the Torchlight newspaper, respectively. I'm saying all of this to say that for those of us, including myself, who idealize positive aspects of the Grenada Revolution, we must also acknowledge the egregious human rights and free press violations of that period, including the severe curtailment of the free press. And on that note, let me welcome my first guest, Brother Amilcar Santanan. It has been a hard work tracking you down, but I'm really happy that you've taken the time to join us. I know that you're very busy. You are currently a PhD candidate, correct?
Yes, I am, Kellan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And so, Amilcar, one of the reasons I brought you back in, I brought you here to the Bub Report, is because I know that there has been a Maurice Bishop Memorial Lecture that happens every year. I believe you had an event yesterday, a virtual event yesterday, but it happens in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell us more about the Maurice Bishop Memorial Lecture.
Yes, the UWI Socialist Student Conference was established in 2015. And there is a tradition that we see in academia to look at death of the revolution as the date we mark the failure of the left. And we wanted to get in front of that and say, let us study the birth of revolution. So we had a partnership with the Grenada Students Association of Trinidad and Tobago, with the UWI Socialist Student Conference, not just to say that the revolutionary is fit for purpose in our time, but to have self-conscious and collective reflection on that moment as students at the University of the West Indies. As you would know, the UWI played a very central role in cultivating academics who would go on to serve the revolution in many capacities, as well as many students who were in Trinidad were involved in revolutionary activity, and they would have to go home to serve the revolution later on. So the Grenada Revolution offers us many political possibilities when we engage in memories of the people and we engage in politics.
You say memories and politics. And of course, one of the things that I was reflecting on was that geopolitical influence at the time. And whenever we talk about geopolitical influence, it's discussed in the context of imperialism. It is discussed in the context of hegemony. But we were able, as people of African descent in the African diaspora, we were able to export the notion of Black power and what that looked like. and the role that Black Power played in, the Black Power uprising in Trinidad and Tobago, socialist movement in Jamaica, the Grenada Revolution. And so my question to you is, do you think that that kind of solidarity that we saw in the 70s in particular and in the early 80s is still relevant today?
Still relevant, and to the language that you were using in terms of its relationship to Black Power. We must understand the Grenada Revolution is the highest political expression of the Black Power Revolution in the English-speaking Caribbean. It is the highest form. It is the political ascension of thinkers, youth, students, union workers into the reins of political power, unlike any other territory. So that's the first acknowledgement. But there is a direct relevance, which is that the state of underdevelopment in our societies, yes, it is historical, but it is not permanent and it is not inevitable. So we need to mobilize the public, to think about mass mobilizations to get across, to transforming our political relations. So an example of a project is this: illiteracy. What we saw with the achievement in Cuba is no different from what the United Kingdom was trying to do with public healthcare and the NHS. And we see the possibilities that it would have when we get the right people to lead a political project to address illiteracy in Grenada. And that is an achievement of the revolution. When we see the institutions like the Center for Popular Education, which became a model for radical forms of pedagogy and engagement. Another aspect of the revolution, because there are so many, I'll just highlight one, because I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, but persons in Guyana were working in Grenada. Persons in Trinidad were working in Grenada, Jamaica in Grenada. People almost took their sabbaticals to go and work in Grenada. So the idea of regional public servants, regional technocrats, regional, not just solidarity as expressions of it, but workers, unions, teachers being part of the development of a Caribbean society is a model for integration. We have it in the region at a very high level often, where our regional institutions draws on the talent throughout the entire Caribbean. But the idea that all sectors of the society could rely on the skill sets and the capacities of other countries in a coordinated way, that is what the Grenada Revolution helped offer us. But it is not without its shortcomings and limitations.
You speak of shortcomings and limitations. Can you expand on or reflect on those shortcomings and limitations in your view?
Oh, certainly, like all political projects, there are severe limitations to what is being articulated, and they are prisoners of their time. So I have hindsight to look back. The approach to Rastafari and marijuana. Now we see that decriminalization is a reality we have to take up. And not just of marijuana, but the whole taboo around drugs and the stigmatization of people, particularly poor people, that in our repertory justice, when we think about reparations, marijuana, forgiveness, so many persons were imprisoned around that. And the attitudes towards Rastafari, the Grenada Revolution, did not have perhaps the most progressive one around it, even though they saw it as a force for Black power and African liberation and consciousness. The role of women, not just into key leadership positions, but yes, the Grenada Revolution helped advance women into political power. But what they achieved was no different than what Trinidad and Tobago achieved without a socialist government. The Caribbean was already making steps towards accepting the role women would play into parliamentary and political leadership. But the paradox of revolution is that it constructs this new woman and the new man, but it does not address sexism through transforming male power and privilege in the political project. So there was more work to be done there. The idea of sexual justice and the rights of diverse sexualities. We can't say that it's just a modern phenomenon. That persons of that background since then. So how do we think about projects that liberate the idea of the family? The idea of the nuclear family as the only model where our laws recognize heteropatriarchal nuclear family. That's what we call it. But when we were critical, why didn't we call that a bourgeois mode of family models? I'm not trying to promote fatherlessness here or the single parent household. I'm trying to say there's a diversity of households in the Caribbean. And in the Caribbean, we have no need to subscribe to European ideas of what a family should serve to their economic needs in whatever century before. And this is how the Grenada Revolution, I think, if it lasted, could invite that self-conscious critique of itself. The major issues, I think, for me is dogma, something I don't subscribe to. I think revolutionary politics must provide an ethic for a new life and discipline in terms of consistency and flexibility of thoughts and reflection. Dogma needs to be challenged. And I would say, I don't want to list out all the bad things that are the shortcomings, but I would say that in terms of the work of youth, we still see the role of mass mobilization. So I think understanding that young people play a part in leadership of society is fundamental.
You talk about mass mobilization, but one of the frustrations that I have as an educator, I'm not only a journalist, but I'm an educator here at Howard University, is that, and perhaps it's because I'm attending a historically black college and university, but in the Caribbean, I'm increasingly frustrated by how much young people are not aware of their history, regardless of what tilt that history takes, whether it comes from the left or the right. Okay? It is our history, our indigenous history. And I think instead of having to wait to attend a university to be educated on your indigenous heroes, that there has to be a way that young people can be aware. You ask a random person in Grenada about the Grenada Revolution, a random young person who is under 30, they know nothing about it. They know absolutely nothing. Okay, and so what can we do as intellectuals, I suppose, in pressuring systemic change with respect to how we engender the things that you talk about around youth mass mobilization and things like that? Unless you can correct me.
Well, if I had the answer, Comrade Kellon, I would be a very powerful man. I would have that tool. I don't know if I would make money off of it or I would use it to my own advantage.
Right.
But one of the things with the young people, an interesting experience I had in Grenada when I went there in the mall and someone was guiding me, and I asked, hey, do you have work on political culture here in the broadest sense?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, we don't talk about that anymore. She made an assumption about who I am because as she knew who I was. And I knew she was referring to the Grenada Revolution. I said, no, anything. So there's a way that we prefer to talk about the Mary Show as compared to the Maurice Bishops and the Jacqueline. Right. And nothing is wrong with that. Mary Show is fundamental to the Federation project. Grenada Revolution is not a moment in time I'm locked into. It's a moment of struggle for sovereignty and regional integration in a longer continuum of history. And we need to absorb that. So for young people, I always say this, we have to be evangelical about our work. The most organized forces in society are the status quo. But we need to take our mandate, as I did as a young person. I grew up Roman Catholic, and I wanted to be a Jesuit priest when I was a little boy. We have to take this mandate of working with the poor, of going into communities, of living out our proof that this is a way in the world that we could have a more fair, just, and free society. So young people, yes, they don't want to be involved when the terms are not there for them. They need to have terms, something at stake, a risk that they could participate in where they think that there's a benefit to their individual lives and the collective of the society. And one of the best things to do is to get young people, human examples like you and I, and some of the people who will be speaking on this program to show that there is a value in having this knowledge to all that we do politically. I show young people, you learn about the Grenada Revolution. Now you have more in common with the people of Grenada in the type of conversations you could have. That is what solidarity looks like. It's not just because this is outside of me. It's because it brings me understanding to do the quality work that we need to have. It reduces the difference and the anxiety of difference between us. So young people, I think, need to see more human examples, more young people in front, and autonomous spaces for them to do independent political work. And that is why we support that.
Yes, that is extremely powerful. So tell us, so the Maurice Bishop Memorial Lecture, that event is held annually. Is it an annual event?
Yes, it is.
It's an annual event. So it's interesting we're talking about labor here on the Burr Report today as well. But I know that you are having conversations around labor as well for this lecture. Could you tell us more about what did labor encompass?
Well, in the parameters of this year's Maurice Bishop Lecture, first we're looking at labor and the politics of racial unity. As you would know, all Caribbean societies are multiracial and multi-ethnic societies. But in some societies, we may have 2 or 3 majority groups, 2 larger populations of it. Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Belize are examples of these multiracial democracies where there's sometimes political competition and ethnic solidarities. The labor movement was very central to advancing that struggle for racial unity by understanding the spatial distinctions, the uneven spatial division of labor. It's not just the division of labor, but different ethnic groups working in different sectors. And they organize unions sometimes in their sector. And guess what happens when you organize a union in your sector? You might be organizing a union around your race. So having cross-racial work to build alliances is fundamental. So the union movement is a part of the labor movement. They are two separate things, meaning that a union is a sector organization. A labor movement is a broader movement around the dignity and the rights around work. The union movement has played a fundamental role of institutionalizing the politics that we would want of the nation, and racial unity is an important component. And if there's any conversation we have with our comrades who are here competing for elections, I'm in no position to lecture you about what you do on the union floor. But I would say to take up that mandate again of thinking about the society, the best of our union movement, thought about radical visions for our society, ending sexual harassment and violence. Looking at the ILO Convention C-190, thinking about the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Looking at CEDAW, how do we take the union to be the change we want in our society? Thinking about maternity leave, not just from employers, nationally, a gender policy, paternity leave, because we want to challenge the unequal division of labor in the house, getting more men to work in care work in the household. But of course, OSHA, operational health and safety, and how we could think about the role of pavements on our road. How do we think about public transportation and the way people participate in ordinary life? There's a lot of work we can do. And as a comrade, I would love to see that.
Let me unmute my microphone. Those are some sage pieces of advice. Because I think right now in this period, labor movements seem to be dwindling, right? And I think, when we think of people like Buzz Butler, Grenadian, by the way, and Eric Gary and all of those major organizers and the solidarity that they brought, how does one have that same solidarity and that same strength in a period, as I said in the intro, where we have unfettered private enterprise seeming to dominate the economic climate in the Caribbean? That a lot of these folks are multinationals who are also not interested in having their workers' union get unionized.
I think that's a great proposition in terms of what you want us to reflect on.
Yeah.
Data show that the union membership is on a decline in many different regions, but particularly in the Caribbean as well, union membership. But I do think the relationship of unions, which is oftentimes in direct confrontation with the state, the solidarity needs to be expanded more horizontally. What civic action groups and civil society groups advances a labor question? So the entry point for unions and their struggle, I think, needs to be more nuanced. And therefore, cultivating the political relationship to the society, it becomes important to the way that they advance their goals.
Yeah.
And that is something. What is the union's relationship to the women's rights movement? What is the union's relationship to the climate justice movement? When we look at the rights of fishermen and fisherwomen who work and face the risk and the threat of environmental disaster and crisis, what is their role in that? What is the union's relationship to student government? Not just to support the union's agenda, but seeing student government as a form of union leadership and using the mandate to have student governments at all secondary schools and all post-secondary schools to transform the way we begin to think about democracy and participation, so union membership and democracy could become a little bit more commonplace. So these are the questions we have, I think, to tackle as a movement and as a society, because any strong society has serious unions. And we have seen that in other examples of the world.
Amilcar, this was very powerful. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I know you are an extremely busy brother, as I am, so I know how challenging it is. But we really appreciate the time that you took to join us today. And so the final question is, the Maurice Bishop lecture that happens, would that be an annual event?
It has been. This was the
It has
first
been.
time we've had it.
Mhm.
But the Socialist Student Conference, we have agreed to close it right now. Many of us have not just graduated, but graduated in terms of our politics. And we have had some recruitment challenges around the work because of our relationship to the university. But the progress of the left has not ended. We will meet again to try to cultivate and ensure that there are political socialization grounds for youth and students to take an active role in citizenship and to promote human rights, solidarity, and the dignity of all people. And because we have union, men and women on this line of workers.
Yes, but before you go, I just want you to reflect on some of these comments. You don't have to respond, but you can marinate on it for sure. Franson Marshall, who by the way was just elected as the one of the second vice presidents of the Grenada Union of Teachers. Congratulations, Mr. Marshall, as an ex-presentation boy. I'm very proud of you. But he says it is important to not review the Grenada Revolution through rose-colored glasses. There were many human rights infringements and curtailing of freedoms. Then Saren Mark says, same for me. I listened to him, and I believe she's referring to you. I'm so pleased that a young person can eloquently critique our revolution, and as a young Grenadian, I feel sad. We need to be more educated about our history. Let's see. Somebody else says, Wilma says, constructive knowledge. Let's see again. Somebody says in Grenada revolution is deliberately kept out of schools because uneducated people are easy to control. That is a very interesting statement there, sir. And the fact is evident in Grenada at present. Mikhail says, sadly, our own history is not taught in schools here in Grenada. Again, someone is saying constructive knowledge. Let's see. Shane Ellis saying, because our decision makers and planners will quicker teach us about Abu Bakr or someone from space, or maybe Christopher Columbus. That's another conversation. So I'm going to leave it to you. Any final thoughts and comments before we get to the next segment?
Yes, well, many persons sent affirmations, but to the comrade who spoke earlier, I agree. We don't look back in history to have a romance story of the past. Real people's lives were lost, but also real decisions were made for progress. And that project was ended. So it is our job. I was not born at that time. As a student of Caribbean history and as a member of Caribbean society, we must go back to think about this thing provocatively, seriously, and then move forward to ensure that we have the dignity for all people as much people. And I hope we understand if we are to take up any project for serious change, because the conservatives are not doing it right now. The post-independent nation state is not doing it right now. And the left has many more years to go with this work, that we must be serious about democracy, human rights, and solidarity as the axis in which we take any politics at all levels, at the governmental level, at the union level, at the student and youth movement level as well.
All right, Amilcar, thank you so much again for agreeing to appear. We had Joanna has been very good with us here on the Bub Report. It's your first appearance, and certainly we hope that you can come back at some point in the future, notwithstanding your busy schedule. Thank you again. All right. Okay, folks, we will take a break. Stand by.
Mr. Prime Minister, as a member of the non-aligned group of nations, do you feel that Dr. Castro's speech at the UN accurately represented your views?
I think it faithfully reflected the decisions that were taken at the non-aligned conference. The only addition I would say would have related to the specific figure for how much assistance.
The financial aid you're talking about.
The developed world, and as you put it, the developing world, should contribute over the next 10 years.
Would you specifically have demanded more funds?
No, I don't think so. I think that is a realistic figure, but I think it's also pretty much a minimum figure.
Do you feel that Castro professes to speak on behalf of the non-aligned nations? Do you see him as a messiah of sorts, a champion to represent the views of those nations?
I think he was duly agreed upon by certainly a vast majority of countries attending a non-aligned conference in Havana. And I believe that most of those countries would certainly share the views of Grenada, that his choice at this point was a good one.
What about in the future?
Every 3 years there are new choices made, and I think we should wait to see what happens then. I couldn't really speak to 3 years from now.
Other than the specific amount of aid which you mentioned, is there anything else that he spoke of that you disagreed with?
I didn't disagree with the amount of aid. And so far as specific points made by President Castro, there's nothing in the speech that I can concretely and specifically pull out as an area of disagreement so far as our own foreign policy is concerned. As you realize, he more or less stayed away from foreign policy issues that were not mentioned or agreed upon at the non-aligned conference. And therefore, there were very few views that were specifically the views of Cuba. There's really nothing I can think of at this point that we would disagree with.
That was the late Maurice Bishop, the second Prime Minister of a post-colonial independent Grenada. And before we get to our guests, I just wanted to share, in conducting some research for this program, I was able to find some articles from my library that reflected the spirit of the time in 1979. And this article was from, I believe, the Time magazine. The title of the article was "The Fall of a Warlock, Even When Voodoo Failed to Stop a Revolution." And that was the headline. I believe that was in April of 1979 in their coverage of the Grenada Revolution, the rise of the Grenada Revolution. They defined and framed Sir Eric Gairy as, in essence, an Obeah man in that article there. That is something I think is interesting. Then there was another article that I found, the case of the menacing runway. Let me share that one. That one was written by, I believe, the Nation newspaper, which is a conservative American newspaper. And Christopher Hitchens essentially covered Maurice Bishop. He actually traveled to Grenada, I believe, and he had an interview with Maurice Bishop. But one of the things that he says is that most press accounts of Grenada leave you with the impression that it is ruled by a regime of dark glasses and steel helmets. A regime, moreover, that is building an air base for Cuban use, in parentheses, an accusation that has been made on the record by Alexander Haig, close parentheses. Often it is very difficult to separate truth from fiction in allegations of this kind. But in the Grenadian case, life is made easy for the inquiring visitor. I spent some time on the island recently and can say confidently that there is not a shred of truth in what the State Department says. So remember, there was a narrative back then that the Cubans were building a runway that would serve as a jump-off point for an armed attack on the United States. Of course, we know that was far from the truth. I think those are the two that I found. But let me take this opportunity to welcome my panel here. This morning, we will be continuing a conversation around the role of trade unionism in Grenada. We are currently witnessing, or we are in the throes of major industrial action by two of the public sector unions. And last week, I believe one of the unions actually held an election. And so I want to bring in the first guest, Mr. Marvin Andel. Mr. Andel, welcome to the Bub Report.
Thank you very much, and a pleasant morning to your viewers and listeners.
Yes, Mr. Andel, you are going to be the outgoing president of the Grenada Union of Teachers. For full transparency, I did reach out to the president-elect. That is Teacher Jude from Primrose. I'm a Primrose man as well. So I just thought I would put that in there. But he deferred to you, and so and that's why we invited you on. But Mr. Andel, would you reflect on your legacy as president of the GUT, notwithstanding that under your presidency, government withdrew salaries from teachers, government extended a significant pressure campaign against your union? Would you say that your tenure was an effective tenure?
Well, we must put the tenure in context because, as can be recalled, I have served before as president in the past, and that was many years ago, 2001 to 2009. And of course, in this dispensation, I served, it's going to be 14 months as president. So in fact, when the deductions were made to teacher salary, at that time, I was not a member of the executive. It was late in 2019, I was elected first vice president. And when the incumbent president resigned from the teaching service in January of 2020, at that point, I took up the presidency for the second time.
And so my question remains, what would you say would be your legacy this second time around? Was it a fruitful tenure?
I would like to blow my own trumpet and say that it was. In that I believe the will to struggle, which is fundamental to trade unions, have been rekindled in our members. The deductions did daunt the spirit of some members, and there was a reluctance and a loss of confidence to some extent in the union leadership, because we were not able then to have the docked salary returned. And of course, that did cause a bit of discomfort and discord to our members. But one of the things we've been able to rally around this, bring some stability to the union, and very importantly, the will to struggle.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Andel, so you have a new executive in place. You have a new president who suggested that he's not going to be conciliatory. Last week we had Chester Humphrey on here, Senator Chester Humphrey, a former militant trade unionist. And so what advice would you be giving to the new executive? They are going to be confronting an intransigent administration in St. George's, an administration that essentially said they will not be budging. They, in the words of some in the trade union movement, they shall not be moved. Mr. Andel, what advice are you going to give to the new executive?
The incoming executive that will take office immediately after our annual conference have a tremendous task to continue this, what we have started, and to strengthen the resolve, because we have to be steadfast in this. We cannot relent. And this, like I said on the onset, is not a sprint, but rather a marathon. So the leadership ought to be resolute, ought to be steadfast, and remain committed to the cause. Because this is not just about a mere 4% salary increase. Because in terms of the monetary amount, it is not substantial. But it is about respect for the collective bargaining process. It's about honoring commitments. And of course, that really has no price. So The will to struggle is something that we must keep alive. We cannot let the momentum drop at this point. We have come too far to turn back now.
Mr. Andel, thank you for that. Let me now take this opportunity to bring in the membership. We have an impressive lineup here, I would say, of trade unionists and public servants, Grenadian public servants. And let me take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Brian Grimes, Mr. Arthur Pear, and Miss Rachel Roberts. Once she gets back on the screen, we are going to bring her in here. But I know that your union, you guys are having an election next week. It's interesting that the only competitive elections we seem to be having in Grenada these days, and I know I might get in trouble for saying this, are elections around the trade unions. But let me thank you, gentlemen and lady. Once Miss Roberts gets back on the screen, we will bring her in. But again, to your question, to the question that I asked Mr. Andel. Now, last week, I would say in a couple of weeks, we have seen a lot of trade union activism by the Grenada Union of Teachers. They've been picketing, they've been wearing different colors, they've been on the street, they've been in front of the ministerial complex. What have you been doing? People are saying that you're not as visible as the other union. Who wants to jump in first, Mr. Pay or Mr. Grimes?
I'll give it to Mr. Grimes.
Mr. Grimes.
All right. Well, good morning, Brother Bob, and to my distinguished panelists, all the viewers, the listeners, and so forth. First of all, Brother Bob, I'd like to just congratulate you on this show, the Bob Report. I mean, it is an outstanding program in terms of objectivity and raising the level of political and social discourse in our country, different to most programs that we have. So hats off to you. In regards to the situation with the 4%.
And then we have Miss Roberts. Miss Roberts, welcome. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Grimes. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Hello, Sister Roberts. Yes. In regards to the 4% struggle and so forth, as Brother Andel alluded to before, it is a struggle not simply for the 4%, even though it is desperately needed at this point in time with exponential rise in inflation and so forth, but it is in relation to, it is in relation to the respect of collective bargaining agreements in this country that the government and our employer seems to be flouting every opportunity they get, going back to 2018 and the Memorandum of Understanding re-pension. Right. In regards to the militancy of the Public Workers Union in this time, I no longer sit on the board at this current time. My last tenure on the board was in 2019 when I ran for the presidency and challenged my dear sister Rachel. So Brother Pierre and Sister Rachel might be able to underscore what are the reasons why. But looking in from outside in, I can say that there is some issues in terms of the way workers view leadership and so forth, in terms of that connection, the executive to the body. Many of the workers are saying that they feel like the leadership is directing the union from the media or from television, and there is no tangible relationship that can be garnered between the members and the heads or the leaders that will instill a sense of militancy. For example, we talk about committees. In unions, you have not just the executive, but you have many standing committees, including what we would call the Shop Steward Council. Now, if the Shop Steward Council or the Shop Steward Committee is ineffective, there is no go-between and liaison between the leaders and the membership, which will reflect in poor turnout and poor participation in protest action.
Ms. Roberts, you currently head the union as the Public Workers Union. I would say that perhaps in looking at gender representation, that the Public Workers Union perhaps has been the only union in Grenada that has significant female representation, which I think is good for trade unionism in the Caribbean. You're one of the leaders. But how do you, again, to the earlier question that I raised, how do you respond to claims that the PWU is not as militant as the GUT in this current 4% struggle? Just unmute your mic, please, Ms. Roberts, to respond. There you
Good
are.
morning to the viewing
Good.
and listening public. And I did
Yes.
respond and was not aware that my mic was muted. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
To your good morning and your welcome and so on. So thank you for having me on the program. I'm very honored to be here this morning. And to respond to you, you must understand the makeup and the composition of the Public Workers Union and its membership. The Public Workers Union is a union that is made up of public officers in all sectors of the government division, the government service. And right now we have a challenge within our union per se, whereby more than 50% of our members are contracted members, temporary members, acting members. And that appears to be having a serious challenge on the union and its ability to effectively participate and to effectively get our membership to be militant as we would want them to be. Remember, the Public Workers Union played a critical and very great role when we did our pension, to be able to get pension. Remember, it was the Public Workers Union who actually led that struggle to get pension by delivering a letter to the Minister of Labor to reinstate the constitutional pension for workers. And members of the Public Workers Union came out and led that march. But let me go back on topic. As we say, we have a large number of contract work, and we work very closely with the government officials, the ministers of government, etc. We are in very close contact with them as a membership. And with having the membership being contract work, you have a very timid membership, because when one is on contract, you would say government has the ability to hire and fire at will. Although as a union, we would never sit idly by and allow our government to be able to hire and fire anyone. Because we have the situation of contract where government continuously is violating the labor laws, Section 29(5). And we call on our government to honor the labor code, just as they have violated the legally signed agreement for that 4%, they continuously violate it. And we have membership that say to us, Sister Roberts, I am on contract. I am very much afraid to come out. I am acting. I do not want my acting to be taken away. I am temporary, and that kind of challenge. But as a trade union, as a union, one of the critical aspects for us is empowering our membership. We must empower our members to understand what are their rights. What does the labor code say? And definitely, Brother Kellon, the labor code Section 25 of the Labor Code gives every worker the right to join a trade union, and members must understand their rights. The ILO Convention 98, etc., gives every worker the right to join a trade union and the right to engage in legal activities of the trade union. And we wish our membership would understand their rights, because we continuously try to empower them and tell them their rights. But one of the critical things for us is that area meetings must be held where you could sit and have that intimate conversation with your membership, so that they can understand, they can ask you questions, you can empower them. Training and development is a very critical thing. And these are some of the things that we have started within the ranks of our movement, to empower persons who could go out there and train our members, etc. And what we have done, we have gotten scholarships from Cipriani Labor College to help us to do that kind of thing, so that we can empower trainers and also empower our members. Because any member under the Public Workers Union also has the ability to come in and access that training. And Cipriani has given us a special privilege whereby our members can pay on a monthly basis so that they do not have to take all the monies out of their pockets at once to pay to access the type of training that we're doing. And we would continuously ensure that we empower, ensure that we educate and get our members on board and get our members feeling more in the know. Now that we have industrial action on hand because government has violated the laws of the land, government has violated the rights of workers because this is a legally signed agreement that speaks to our rights. And if you are going as a government to be disrespectful and to not honor the laws of the land, it tells us what type of employer that we are dealing with. We are dealing with a ruthless employer who has no consideration to respect the laws of the land.
So, Ms. Roberts, going back to what you said earlier about the dwindling membership of the union, so let us create a distinction.
Let's correct. Not the
Yeah.
dwindling membership, the dwindling permanent established
established workers. But again, the question that I have is, okay, well, those workers whose tenure is not secured, that is one thing, but you still have workers and members in the union whose tenures are secured. And so what are you doing, especially for those who have security of tenure, to join arms and to lock arms with members of the Grenada Union of Teachers in that struggle? I think that is what the question that people have under your leadership.
As a union, as I said before, we are continuously seeking to motivate. And when you have a struggle coming up, what you have to do as an executive is get out there and motivate and mobilize your members by holding area meetings with them so that members understand the nature of the struggle. Members get themselves involved in the struggle. And I believe we had to do some more consultation with our members to get them really active, to get them really participating.
So therefore,
happen.
Correct. So therefore, are you saying you're saying that you have to do more? But my question is, what have you done as president of the union to ensure that happens?
And yes. Definitely, as president of the union, we normally have what we call television press releases. So we would do releases to our membership to get them to know, listen, this is happening and we're asking you to participate. Because of the COVID situation, we were not really able to go out to our members this era. And we held area meetings in terms of Zoom meetings, etc., to get our members more involved, to get them more informed. And I think members within themselves must feel a need to support and to be part of the organization. And you
are you saying they don't feel a need to do that?
Pardon me? No. Brother Kellon, don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
We will not have another Chester Humphrey episode from last week.
As a union leader,
yes,
you have to first lead by example. All union leaders, executive members must lead by example. And you know that Sister Roberts is in the struggle all the time. Sister Roberts stands firm all the time. And one of the critical arms of the union is our shop shows. We must have shop shows that are active, shop shows that are participating. And one of the things that occurred within the PW over the period is that we have lost some of our shop shows due to retirement. Right? They exit the service due to retirement. Even the chief of our shop shoot committee exited. And that is having a critical impact on us as a union in our ability to really organize. And that is why we really want this time around to ensure that when we elect shop shows, we elect shop shows who would last for the entire term of office. Because many of our shop shows are no longer there, and we have to seek and try to use other sources to reach our membership and to get them more involved. And there comes the support of the executive to be able to do that. You need a supportive executive to be able to assist in mobilizing, assist in going out and meeting with the membership. Because as a leader, you have to lead by example, as I said. Executive members must also show that they are part of the process, that they are out there mobilizing and getting members involved. And with a supportive executive, with an executive that is willing and ready to go the extra mile and to do what it takes, of course, we would have a union that is up, ready, and willing to go. And under my tenure, I can tell you that we have had our membership very much involved in the process. This COVID period, things have gotten a little weak because of the inability to really reach out there and go physically to sit with your members and have the kind of dialogue that you would want to have.
Okay, well, let me bring in the other two members. One is on the executive. I believe Mr. Pear is on the executive, and another gentleman here, Mr. Grimes. He served on the executive, but he's no longer on the executive. Gentlemen, how do you respond to your comrade here, Mr. Pear? We'll start with you.
Yes, I felt a little left out there a while.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm bringing you back. This is an inclusive space.
To deal with the issue of the 4%, this is a very important fight. A very, very important fight. It's not, and again, both speakers in the persons of Mr. Grimes and Mr. Andal indicated that. I have some issues, and I want to look at it a little bit differently. Now, I think it was in 2018 or 2019 when workers were called out to strike, right? Right after that, and then we were struggling for the issues of pension and gratuity. Right after that, salaries were docked, okay? And I believe our union did not really and truly stand up with workers when we had docked salaries. There are persons who have been members, and both parties within the family structure would have lost salaries. We did not respond well. We did not support them. And because of that, members are afraid. They seem to have lacked faith in our union. Yes, we could make all the other excuses, but the truth is that we needed as a union to be able to say, look, we may not have enough funds and so, but there are families who might be less off than others that we should have supported. The issue of engagement with people becomes critically important. When we look at our union currently, our major arms, they are arms of the union that I refer to as the root of the union. Our men's arm, our women's arm, our youth arm, our shop stewards. Those arms are not functioning the way that they need to function. And we talk about shop stewards leaving and shop stewards retiring. As a union, we have to mind our business. If we know that persons are leaving, we must have a succession plan in place to ensure that there is an easy transition from where you are into where you're going to be, and somebody is taking up that mantle. Now, again, let me get back on the 4%. The 4% is extremely important. We have seen government in a time like this, and you're hearing pronouncements of persons within the administrative body speaking about we are greedy and workers should understand. Now, bear in mind, just recently, we have seen government hire a new political operative. I wouldn't call the person's name, but they hired that person as a consultant.
That's Alexandra Otway Noel. Let's not call their name. That's who the person is.
That person is not getting just an ordinary salary. That person is getting salary with some perks. When we look at the issue of traffic lights, we are hearing now that government is organizing funds to put traffic lights up. What happened to your workers? There are persons within the ambits of the public service who have to live from loan to loan on a monthly basis to be able to pay bills. 4%, yes, it's a measly sum, but treat us with respect. Treat us with the dignity and the honor that we deserve. Public officers, being a public officer should be a proud and an honorable thing. But when you have pronouncements within Parliament, when you have pronouncements on the highest office of our land, saying that we are greedy and we are lazy and we are thieves. It is shameful, it is distasteful, and I don't appreciate it.
But Mr. Pear, the government's position is that it's a matter of timing. It is not
Right.
that they will not
Now,
compensate you. Well, let
now,
me finish. Let me finish, please. It's not that they will not compensate you for the 4%, but it is felt that your action is ill-timed, given the current economic climate in the world. That is their position.
One of the problems I am having is that the government have not given us the respect to tell us that, look, we are going to give you, we are going to pay you in the next 3 months. We are going to pay you in the next 6 months. They have not afforded the respect of the union. They have not given us that respect. That is distasteful. That is dishonorable. When you look at a public servant, we hold the government up. Government members, they come and go every 4 years. But we are constant. We are the constant here. And we must get the respect from government by saying, look, yes, we cannot pay you. We will review our finances within 3 months and give us some time or so. Don't just tell us we are going to pay you when we feel like. No, you cannot cut it like that.
Mr. Grimes, I will get to you, and that is a question because both of you are contesting the leadership. We will get into more questions about that later, but I just wanted to get your take on the 4%. You've been very vocal on this matter. We had Senator Chester Humphrey here last week. Many folks thought that I was bullied by the good comrade, but I take it in stride. I have a broad back. I'm fine. I'm good. But what are your first of all? How do you respond to a lot of the claims that he made that you folks are not being fair in this period, that you are tone deaf to the other needs of Grenadians who are not necessarily receiving a paycheck at the end of the month? Mr. Grimes, you need to mute your mic. Go ahead. It's still muted, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Yes.
So first of all, I just want to give you my pledge that I will participate in an interview and not a soliloquy, so you can be the host that you are. Right? I saw the program last week, so I know of what you speak.
Yeah.
The 4% issue. It's an open and shut case for me. It's very easy to see because being in the movement for an established period of time, a long period of time, 14 years, I have seen some activities coming from the interpersonal relationship or the bilateral relationship between the government and the unions that lends itself to an image that the government or our employer does not respect our trade union, in particular, the Public Workers Union. Now, you look at the situation with the dock salaries in 2018 when workers stood up for their rights, repensioned, and it happened in December, no less, a critical period for Grenadians in general, re their families. And you look at the situation with the memorandum of understanding that was violated, where we went from a 25% gratuity to a 2%, right? And you look at all of this holistically, and then in this very same period, public officers witnessed that the government found in excess of $170 million to service a debt, found it almost immediately to service a debt with a foreign company, Grenada, that was functioning very well. And that money basically took capital flight and left our country. The government did that. Keep in mind that to repay public officers and heal the relationship, the bilateral relationship between the unions and the government, it's less than $2.5 million to pay back the unions and the workers the money that was viciously docked in 2018, Christmas of 2018. Public officers are seeing this. Keep in mind, Brother Bob, everyone, keep in mind that in this said period, we have exponential increases in fuel, in freight, which has a reverberating effect on all goods, cooking gas, everything you can think about. So the 4%, will not redound in an improvement in the standard of living for workers, but it's just to keep one's head above water, according to the great Beres Hammond. It's just to keep our head above water. The 4%, if applied to our salaries, will redound well in the economy because public officers are heavy consumers. We'll go to small businesses, we'll go to vendors, we'll be able to qualify for loans, right? Whereby if we didn't have that 4%, it can't happen, right? So yes, there is absolute fiscal need for the 4%, but on top of that, let us go to principle which I was alluding to before. How can you unilaterally violate a collective bargaining agreement and say, when we have the money, we could pay? And obscenely, we see that you found inordinate amounts of money to service other debts. This 4% fight is for the survival of public officers in tight economic times, but it is also for the survival of the trade union movement and the institution of the trade unions. That's my take on the 4%.
Let me bring in the other members here now. Before we get to a discussion on, obviously, Ms. Roberts, these two gentlemen are challenging your presidency. I suspect that they probably see a deficit with respect to your leadership, which spurned them to challenge your presidency, and so we will get into that conversation shortly. But there is a question about the strike fund. Can you tell us about the strike fund? I know that unions, and maybe Mr. Andrew can answer this. What is the current outlook with respect to the strike fund? Ms. Roberts, you need to unmute.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Before I go into the strike fund, I definitely want to speak about the 4% because it is a critical issue for us. And one of the things about the 4% is the trust. Government has certainly violated that trust that we had in them, because government said to us that they found monies through grants and loans to pay WRB some $63 million, US million dollars, to find the money. They found the money in the way middle of the night when all of us was sleeping and paid WRB, but they could not pay us our 4%. And when we examine
That was from
our
the capital
estimates,
side of the budget,
when
though.
we
That was not.
examine our estimates of revenue and expenditure, we see that government said that under the recurrent expenditure, they had $620.1 million, and under the capital, $121 million, the actual. And what was approved was $225 million for the capital and $633.7 million. So we definitely know that if they got from the recurrent expenditure, that would be only 13.3 million. If they got from the capital expenditure, it would be only 106.2 million. So all the monies that government could find under grants and loans was $116.8 million. And we know that in order to find monies and use it up from grants and loans, government must seek permission to be able to spend the monies in a different fashion for which the monies was ordered. So there, you cannot trust government when it tells you that it cannot pay because it would find monies other ways. So we know there is money somewhere. Another thing is, we sent out a press release concerning Alexandria Otway Noel that spoke to the fact that she was being employed, and you said you cannot pay us, you cannot appoint our contract workers, and you cannot pay the 4%. No, by the time we receive that 4%, the inflation rate has gone up because we know what is happening now with freights, etc. Freight is increasing, and the cost of goods at the supermarket is definitely increasing. So it means that we going to the supermarket, it reduces our purchasing power. The power that we have to spend would definitely be reduced when the inflation rate increases. So by the time we get that 4%, it would just be a cost of living balance, and it may be less than a cost of living balance, because the value of the dollar would be so much less. So I just want to point that out, and to say also that government has a number of traffic wardens, but we are hearing that government is going to be buying traffic lights very soon, costing some $30 million. If government is going to be buying traffic lights costing some $30 million, what is going to happen to the traffic wardens that you have employed? And in this environment, when we know we have much more vehicles than before, the traffic lights are not sensitive. They do not have the power to see when a vehicle is there or not. And therefore, buying traffic lights and fixing traffic lights at this time would not be very economical for Grenada, or very sensible, because our traffic wardens and police officers who are there now calling the traffic would do it in a more efficient manner. So we call on our government to make wise decisions, to make decisions that would ensure that the interests of the people of Grenada, the workers of Grenada, is really upheld. Because what they're doing now is definitely just telling us that monies are being expended and it's not bringing value to us as a people. Because if government has a high interest in tourism, and if we're thinking about tourism, just looking at our police officers call the traffic should be a tourist attraction. So we should look at this in a very strategic manner in the interest of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martin.
Miss Robertson, back to the
Yes,
question about the strike fund. You didn't answer that part of my
right.
question.
What I want to say to you is that in some time, you remember when we're under Brother Adrian Francis's lead, when Brother Adrian Francis served as president of the Public Workers Union. Not that I want to put our business out in public, but I'll explain to you. We were able to secure some monies from workers who were severed from the Grenada Postal Corporation. These members, being grateful to the Grenada Public Workers Union, said to us, listen, I'll give you this amount of monies. Each member gave a certain amount of monies to the Grenada Public Workers Union, which we said, okay, you know what is happening? Because we have strikes coming up and we want to develop that ability to be able to safeguard the interests of workers whenever we have a strike, we would put that monies into a strike fund. The executive, led by Brother Francis, took that decision. And it was a very small amount of monies, not over 100,000, way under $90,000 that we got. And we placed that monies in a secure fixed deposit within one of the financial institutions in Grenada, so that that monies could grow, because that monies was not a very substantial amount. And therefore, we felt whenever we have some big industrial action where the union has grown those funds, and it is affordable for us to secure our membership, to be able to support them so that they can strike for a long period. If we have a strike that lasts a really long period, we can do so. But I heard persons say that the union did not support its members during that period. As a matter of fact, the union wrote to every financial institution in Grenada, including its very own credit union that it is affiliated with, the Public Service Credit Union, now called ARISA. We went to all the financial institutions, including them, and said to them, listen, this is what has happened to our members. And it would create a challenge because persons have mortgages, etc. And we would like you to extend the facility of a moratorium to our members to help safeguard them so that they can get that little period to be able to get themselves back up and running, to be able to continue paying their mortgages, etc. And it is an executive decision. The executive did not take a decision to say we shall pay members any monies from the strike fund, because the strike fund, as I said, is a very small, limited amount. And we make decisions in
Ms.
our...
Roberts, if your union decides today that they are going to withdraw their labor, hook, line, and sinker at this point in time, to essentially keep that pressure on the administration. Are you then suggesting that the membership would not really benefit from the strike fund significantly?
That would be a decision that Ms. Roberts would not be able to make on her own. That would be a decision that the executive of the union would have to sit and make that decision, because decisions are not made on an individual basis. Decisions are made on a collective basis, whereby the executive would make the decision by a vote, and the majority would decide, yes, we can do this, or no, we cannot do it. So it is not Ms. Roberts to make the decision. It is the executive to make the decision. And let me say, other unions lost in this battle. And I'm not aware that any member of the GUT received monies from the GUT. And the GUT membership is out and doing exactly what they have to do. Years ago, workers would strike and would not get back any monies. In 1989, when it was the Blaze struggle, the union strike, Public Workers Union, was one of the biggest unions out on the street protesting. And I joined the union during that 1989 struggle and was out on the street. And we lost a day's pay. Everybody lost a day's pay. Nobody came to the union and said, union, you have to pay me back my monies, right? As workers, we have to recognize that sometimes to get more, we have to sacrifice a little to get more, because what we were going to receive is on a continuous basis. And your pension is so serious that you must be willing as a member to make a little sacrifice for your pension, so that in the long run, you secure yourself as a senior citizen.
So you're essentially making a lot of the same arguments that your comrade Chester Humphrey made last week about sacrifice. But let me stick a pin and let me bring in the two members who are challenging you here, Ms. Roberts. They appear to be the fact that these two gentlemen are challenging your presidency. I suspect can say a lot about your leadership, and so I will give them an opportunity to articulate. And I will start with you, Mr. Grimes. Why are you challenging Ms. Roberts? Are you not pleased with her leadership?
Yes, thanks again. I just want to make it clear to all the listeners, all the viewers, that me and Sister Roberts, there is no, what I should say, personal difference between us. But there are definitely differences in philosophical and professional approaches to leadership. Hence the reason I challenged her in 2019. Now, there are a number of things that transpired which I don't want to get into in high detail, but one of the things, since we are, envelope around that particular topic, was the strike fund in 2018. Now, I certainly, and she's here to dispute it or confirm it, but I'm speaking the truth. In 2018, I had a fundamental problem with the union not giving something back to workers, without stating specifically the funds that is within the strike fund. There was a serviceable amount. Now, in leadership, when you have soldiers out, meaning the rank and file, you are supposed to demonstrate solidarity with them. You are supposed to do that. So let's imagine that the strike fund is $90,000 and each worker gets $150. 600 workers can be serviced. So they lose $500 or whatever it is, but they get back $150. They understand that the union has their back, which reflects psychologically for a next battle. Now, as a leader, you always have to think futuristically. What is going to happen down the road? And Brother Bob, as you pointed out, the rationale of the dear sister seems to be in conjunction with the status quo and the government and the operatives or the representatives of government, whereby money supersedes the needs of workers. right? And this is basically the argument of our president at this point, and we disagree with that fundamentally in 2018, which was one of the things that triggered my response to challenger for the presidency, because I realized the morale, the direction, the strategy of our organization was in jeopardy. I also want to apologize to workers for the statements of our dear president, by her referring to them as timid and insinuating that their spirit is not one of a fighting nature. That is fundamentally wrong. I believe as leaders, we are supposed to look in the mirror to see how can I inspire, how can I do better for my membership, our membership, so that they can be better. Now you have the Grenada Union of Teachers operating in the same space, social and economic space, as the Public Workers Union. But yet for all, you see, the Grenada Union of Teachers on a particular day, about a week and a half ago, 150 teachers stormed the ministerial complex housed by Public Workers Union members. And I only saw one sister from PW come down and give solidarity in the video that you had earlier on. But it is a reflection now of where the members of those respective unions are thinking about their unions in terms of, do they have my back or not? So now the GOT clearly believes, irrespective of salaries being docked, my union is effective. My union has a strong organization. And the PW believes there is this organization. If I do something and I step out there, when I turn around, I will not see my leadership. So you're correct above in your assumptions that I have issues philosophically and professionally with the sister, not personally. Yes, I think the leadership.
And that is why you ran. And Mr. Roberts, I'm going to give you a chance to respond, but let me get to your other competitor, Mr. Pear. Same question.
Yes.
Why are you challenging the leadership of your dear president?
Very well. Again, let me also say that I have no issues with Ms. Roberts. I believe that Ms. Roberts at this particular time has had the baton for the last 2 terms, and she has done as much as she can. I believe it is now time for a different type of leadership of the PWU, a different brand of leadership, a leadership that is strategic, that is focused. And I being part of the executive for the last 2 years, we had some problems with that. I have on numerous occasions sat with Ms. Roberts and said to her, I have a difference in terms of how that the leadership of the executive should go. But she is the president. Now, to really push our union forward, we have to reorganize and reconstruct. We have to ensure that our arms function and they function properly. We have to include people. My objective is an objective of inclusion. We have so many skills and talents within the rank and file of the membership that we have not harnessed, we have not pulled together, we have not used for the benefit of the union. My objective is really and truly to be able to do that. You know, in the art of what it said, if you don't know neither your enemy or yourself, you will succumb in every aspect of the battle. We have to pull our union members together. We have to ensure that we support them. Now, as it relates to supporting members, given the strike fund, it's a situation where we should have had something to give. Say something. It's not just a matter of going and ask banks to ease up the issues, but there are persons who may need funds on a day-to-day basis. Some little token should have been extended. And let me also say, as a union, we must organize and structure our funds in such a way that we would have something there in the kitty in cases and situations like this.
Okay, Ms. Roberts, a lot has been laid at your feet in the election. As I said before, this appears to be a bruising battle. Obviously, it is, looking at differences with respect to direction. Ms. Roberts, the jury seems to conclude here, at least these 2 gentlemen, that they have difficulty with your leadership. Why then are you contesting the presidency? You've served 2 terms.
Let me say, brother Bob, Presidents in the Public Workers Union have served for 5 terms, have served for 7 terms. Sister Laurette Clarkson, may her soul rest in peace,
Died
served our
last year.
union for 14 years.
Mhm.
Sister Madonna Harford, strong female presidents, served the union for 10 years. And let me say something. I stand on a principle of integrity and a principle of unblemished public service record, having served 32 years in the public service. And I would never sit here and try to say any lies to our membership. I would not let membership think that things can happen in a certain way when we know it is not possible. And let me say this, as I keep saying, the president of the union doesn't make decisions. Decisions are made on a collective basis in the executive and on the union level at meetings. So any executive bring a matter to the union, it would be judged based on the collective will of the executive. So the president would not have to say, this is not happening and it doesn't happen. If the executive determined this is going to happen, it would happen. And I recall very much when the funds were taken out, and we looked at how we could cushion the effects for our membership, this is what was decided. A decision was even tried. As a matter of fact, the president placed a decision on the table, a recommendation on the table to say, listen, we have members who are at a very disadvantaged situation because of their salaries, the low salaries that they have. So what I would want to happen, what we would want to happen is to ensure we cushion the effects for those members. And it was said, if we're not going to give back to all our members, we're not going to give back to any member. And the executive stood on that principle, recognizing that the funds were some low, not a lot of funds. So if we give back to any member, it meant that we would diminish the funds. Example, let me say this. What actually happened in the removal of the funds was the question of the fact that the funds were removed without the authority of the Public Service Commission, because the decision was made by the political directorate to remove these funds, which was wrong. The political directorate do not have the ability to discipline any public officer. That is done by the Public Service Commission. So when a public officer must be disciplined, example, the Public Service Commission is the one to do that. And we have the right to strike. If you look at the labor code and you look to what is said in the labor code, all workers have the right to strike. So Sister Roberts is not saying that the union should not cushion members. What I'm saying is that years ago, members made the sacrifice that they needed to make in order to ensure that their rights were respected. Local trade unionists made the decision that if we have to go out and strike, we go out and strike. And the unions came together. The teachers union, the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union came together in that struggle for the pension. And we went out there and we struggled. And we did what had to be done to safeguard the interests of the pension. In the first case, the Public Workers Union was the last union to sign on to that pension agreement because it was felt that, listen, we have a legal constitutional pension and this is the pension we must uphold, right? And the workers, the members said to me, Sister Roberts, we want you to sign on. And Sister Roberts listened to the membership and we went and we signed that agreement. And then we had to jump out of the agreement because government again broke a legally binding agreement and said they did not say 25%, they said 2%, but it is implied that your gratuity is 25% all over the world. Gratuity is 25%. And the Grenada Public Workers Union, the Grenada Union of Teachers, the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union took the government to court. And we are presently in court. working to achieve our pension. And that is the rightful pension that we need to struggle for. That is the rightful pension that we all need. I'm not going to give any member any false hope. I'm going to stand on the principle of truth, this principle of ethical standards. And when I stand here as a president, I would not tell any lies to any member and give them false hope and give them false belief. I would empower members as much as I possibly can. And Sister Roberts is in the struggle for that 4%. And we placed on the table to our employer exactly how we want to receive that 4%. Because what we know is that our employer is consistently violating the laws of the land, consistently violating the rules of employment, and having persons on contract and not ensuring that our contracted brothers and sisters who cannot go to the bank and get a loan, who cannot support themselves, are not taken care of. And we have to safeguard the membership. We have to safeguard all our members. And if you knew, our nurses took action to safeguard nurses. Our established nurses were out in the field battling day by day to safeguard our nurses. And they are prepared to continue to go out there because we know what contract employment is doing to us. Because it is not only affecting the union, it would very soon affect the institution of public service. And that institution of public service that says we must have established officers. And very soon, when many of us leave the public service, the established officers, what we would find is that we have a public service that is made up only of contract workers, and government can do as it wish. Government has the ability to hire, to fire, to do as it wishes, to control the public service. And this is critical for us to ensure that we get our officers who are on contract appointed. And we have been working over the period
Okay.
with that.
Yes, Ms. Roberts. Yes, Ms. Roberts. Let me get to
Yes.
Mr. Pear. We have to quickly wrap up.
Yes,
My
yes,
producers are telling
yes.
me it's time. But Mr. Pear, I want to give you a chance to rebut, and Mr. Grant.
Right. I do believe that Sister Roberts seemed to have a different recollection on the issue of assistance after the docking of salary. I am sorry to say, but the executive of 2019 clamored to help their members. They clamored to help their members, and I think that is as much as I would want to say at this particular time. Our members need a mature leadership, a leadership that is strategic, a leadership that has vested interest is in the members of the union. I know that I could bring this onto the table. We have to unify our members. We have to empower our members. We have to train our members. For the last couple of years, when you talk to members, have they had training in terms of their rights and responsibilities? Have they had engagement in terms of the arms that existed? Okay, have these arms functioned? These persons are the persons who would have had those arms sit on the executive, but have they functioned?
Mr. Pear, you are on the executive as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you should be able to answer that question.
Very good. And when we clamored to ensure that these arms will function, we had a leadership that basically wasn't too keen on anything like that. I'm sorry to have to bring those issues up, but those are the burning issues. Those are the burning issues that we need to fix. So my intention, running for presidency, is to really build from the ground up. We have to pull our members together. We have to strengthen them. We have to give them some degree of hope, engage them where they are, use their skills and talents to ensure that our union becomes strong.
Mr. Grimes, you were also on the executive, but you left. I mean, it just appears in reading the tea leaves today that your union and the sentiment is also reflected here, that your union is extremely divided at a time when the expectation is that your union should be coming together. at a period when you are dealing with an intransigent administration? Mr. Grimes?
It is self-evident. It is self-evident based on the turnouts and the protests and the reports in the media and the evident chemistry between people who sit on the same executive at this point in time. Now, just going back to what Sister Rachel was speaking about in regard to the docking of the salaries, it is true that the government did an illegal act, and it is not guesswork. Under Section 51 of the Employment Act, it states categorically that anything of that sort needs to go through the Labor Commissioner. What I would want to place on the table here, Brother Bob, because the current president is professing honesty in her leadership. On the eve of the 2019 election, March 7th, she went on national television and promised to take the government to court based on the legal backing and interpretation, read the docking of the salaries. I would like you, as the host, do me that favor to place that question after 2 years and see if that was initiated. Right? Thank you.
Ms. Roberts, the question that was posed to you. You need to unmute your mic, Ms. Roberts.
Yes, that case was filed by our lawyer, the then Mr. Cadgerton Hood, who filed the case along with the Grenada Union of Teachers. A case was filed. We went to the registry at the court and the case was filed. We filed a case, myself and Brother Lydon Lewis, who was the then president of the Public Workers Union. We have not had a court hearing for the case, and that is one of the issues that our lawyers would have to tell us where the case is. However, let me see. I hear my goodly brother stating making a number of claims about the arms of the union. Sister Rachel Roberts is not the chair of any of the arms of our union. All our arms of our union have chairs. And let me tell you, just about in 2020, just before COVID, the member of our women's committee resigned from the women's committee. It is now the the youth arm also was not present, because let me tell you what happened. And I don't like to air dirty linen in public, but I like to stand on truth and honesty, and people must be honest and truthful. When we came into office and we had to hold elections to ensure that all the arms of our union was functioning effectively, we had a battle. Persons who were on the various arms did not come forward to be able to hold the necessary meetings which had to be held. When Sister Roberts insisted that meetings must be held, persons came back onto the executive without even being elected. 7 days, according to our union, our constitution, 7 days after the Constitution speaks to the fact that there must be a meeting and the sharpshooters are elected, and then we have another meeting to elect the chair of the sharpshooters, right? And those things were not held because persons felt, oh, I am on the executive and I have the ability to continue. I must not be removed. I must sit. And Sister Roberts cannot make the decision by herself. That is an executive decision. And if the executive make the decision and say, oh, these persons must continue sitting without having the elections being held, we have an issue. And therein lies the challenge we had. And the person sitting on the executive actually held meetings with the women, with the youth, with the men, with the sharpshooters. Our sharpshoot chair actually left. Our sharpshoot was functioning up until the sharpshoot chair left, right? I don't have control over those things. Those are things that that you have to oversee as the president. But it is the chair, and if you say to your chairs, do what has to be done, and they're not doing it, the membership must then hold them accountable. And our chairs, I know that we called many meetings also for our youth arm. And it was also a great challenge. And our youth arm helped to form the arm of the teachers' youth arm. It was the chair of our youth arm, Sister Atasha Joseph, who went out there to the teachers' union and actually supported the teachers' union in forming their youth arm. Because our youth arm chair was a very experienced person, having attended a number of meetings at the Caribbean Public Service Association level and the Public Service International level. So she knew all about
Okay.
the youth arm and being able to get it done. So when we speak about the president not doing certain things, persons sitting on the council have a good knowledge of what they did to ensure that these things did not happen.
Well, it sounds, again, it does, Mr. Pei, quickly, and then we have to take a break.
Very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Yes, we have to take a break, and I'll get you
close
to wrap up.
my comment in a question. When we have 5 persons resigning from an executive, including persons who would have governed the women's arm, and as a president, as a leadership, you felt that it was fit to sit there and not do anything about it. When we have persons, when we reach out, and maybe not for lack of effort, when there is an effort to reach out to persons who should fall under those arms and nothing is happening, it should now become priority for the executive, priority for the leader to say, look, enough is enough, let's pull this thing together.
Okay.
That is as much as I would say.
Okay. All right. Let me. We will take a break, and then we have to wrap up. No, we have to wrap up, Ms. Roberts. But I will give all of you, including Mr. Andel, an opportunity for closing comments, because it's way past our time. But I believe that this is a conversation that we needed. We started last week with Senator Chester Humphrey, and we continued this week with you all. And it's very important to know what's happening in the trade union community. So folks, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
All right, folks, welcome back. I would start with Mr. Andel. Mr. Andel, thank you so much for staying with us. You have been following this discussion here, but I want to give you the opportunity to really wrap up, give you a chance for some closing comments, if you can be brief.
Let me indeed congratulate the members from the Public Workers Union who are offering themselves for the tough task of leading their organization, and I wish them well in the elections coming up next week. As for our organization, we have a new executive. Some members have served in the past, and I am confident that they can do a good job. When I look back, I am thankful. When I look ahead, I am hopeful. And when I look around, I believe that I still can be helpful. Thank you.
Notes of optimism. Are you? That was some very lyrical stuff there from you, Mr. Andel. Thank you again for appearing on the Bub Report, and all the best to your new executive.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and let me get to members of the union. Now, after the election on Wednesday, all of you would have a serious task of bringing your organization together. Because, again, the old adage goes, unity is strength. There is a lot, shall we say, perhaps dirty linen that was aired here on the Bub Report, perhaps things that maybe we should not have heard as members of the public, but I'm glad that the Bub Report gave you an opportunity to have those very important discussions. As you said, this is not, for me on the Bub Report, it is not about personalities, it's about the issues. And so I will start with you, Mr. Pei, and I will go to Brian and then Ms. Roberts for some closing comments. Looking forward beyond the elections, what does that look like? And what do you want to see insofar as bringing your union together and moving forward on the whatever form the leadership would take after Wednesday?
Very good. Looking forward, a lot of work has to be done indoors. When I say that, we have to build the union back. We have to rebrand, we have to rebuild, we have to remotivate, we have to refocus. We must involve all of our members. The Public Workers Union has with it a plethora of skills and talents that we have not effectively tapped into. And I believe that, and I know that, I can pull those things together and to ensure that we have a stronger union. I have the support of my family. I have the support of my pastor, my church. I have the support of many members who would have come and clamored for a new type of leadership, for a leadership that is mature, for a leadership that is strong, for a leadership that is honest and is filled with integrity. That is what I bring to the table. And what I would ask public workers to do is to consider the state of their union. They have a part to play. We all have a part to play. And may God help us as we move forward.
Mr. Grimes?
Yes. Well, thanks again for giving me the opportunity to come on this platform. We have had a lot of tit for tat on this program, but I believe that our union needs to grab the opportunity to ascend to maturity. On the 16th of March, Tuesday, the 16th of March, people ought not to simply hope for change, but they should vote for change. I pledge, if I become or when I become leader, because I must move forward with optimism, I will work with everyone on the executive and the rank and file to build back the image and the effectiveness of the union. It is not simply wordplay. Since 2019, I had a vision for the organization in terms of how it should move forward, which includes having database and scientific negotiations to read down benefits for workers. As it stands now, there is more emotional talk and there is no statistics to drive information in order to get benefits for workers. Regarding earlier, I spoke to the organizational structure of the PW as it relates to maybe a GOT and the turnout at events, protests, whatever it is. Our PW constitution has provisions for branches under section 9.3. And under my leadership, I certainly would do an experimental act in going to Carriacou and starting a branch there where they can be an executive in Carriacou, which will be similar to what the GOT practices, which brings spin-off benefits in terms of organization and overall operational effectiveness. So I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity. Thanks to the listeners and viewers. And let us hope for a new dawn of unity and camaraderie within our organization. And I pledge to be the man and to be the leader to bring that. Thanks to all.
Yes, Mr. Grimes, is this your second time contesting the presidency? You lost before, yes?
Yes, Sister Rachel gave me a whipping in 2019, but as a true trade unionist, I'm back to redeem myself.
Okay, but after losing, did you remain on the executive? Did you have a role on the executive?
No, I did not have a role on the executive, but as a consummate trade unionist that I am, I advocated, I used my social media platform, and I even interjected in the mainstream media on issues that could benefit workers. So I've been active.
But Mr. Grimes, you would also appreciate that activism, again, I'm not a political strategist. Activism is more than social media activism. You would agree with that, yes? Okay, I just thought I would put that out there. I'm not injecting any bias here. I don't want folks to say, well, you know. Okay,
no problem. I've been on the ground.
Mr. Roberts, to you, a final summation from you.
My final comments is to want to ask Mr. Grimes, why you not a part of the men's arm? You need to be a part of the men's arm. You should have joined the men's arm so you could contribute, man. Yeah. The next thing is, I want to say that as a president, I stand on the ethical principle of truth. I stand on the principle of an unblemished public service track record. Other persons are actually vying for the position of presidency. And I see no reason why, as a president, that to get to where I want to go, that I need to tell false. I would speak truthfully and I would speak honestly, and I would not at no time try to say what is not true.
But Mr. Roberts, let me just also say that the fact that you have these two gentlemen competing against you, and we've heard a lot about
You
what has
expected.
happened. Well, let me finish. Let me finish, Ms. Roberts. I suspect it might say a lot about your own leadership. It is an indictment on your leadership. I mean, this morning here, I didn't even know this. You had mass resignations from your executive. How many people resigned? Can someone remind me?
Let me say this.
You had many
Persons who
under your
resigned
leadership.
from the executive
Yeah.
resigned on just before COVID. We had three resignations, and earlier on we had one. Let me just say this. So within the month of March, we had three resignations effective the 31st of March.
So,
Right?
to what extent
Um,
are those resignations a reflection of your leadership? That's the question.
I don't have control over people and the decisions that you would make. Anyone has a decision to make. And if someone feels that I need to resign from an organization, that is their decision. That doesn't reflect on the leadership, because the reasons why they may resign may be personal reasons, right? Reasons based on the fact that they have personal issues. I don't control that. And I'm not going to go there. As the prime minister say, I'm not going to go there.
Well,
Persons who want to do what they do it on their own standing, on their own will. And I'm not going to challenge them. But I know that as a leader, I am always a leader who stand with the membership in struggle, whether it is in the struggle, whether it is in the good time, whether it is in the bad time. I am always there. And I would never give up our membership on and not struggle and fight for the rights of workers and for the interests of workers to ensure that I achieve that interest that workers have. And one of the things that I have done recently is to return back to school. Yes, back to the Cipriani Labor College, because my training in negotiations was on a mutual gains basis, where I was able to do extremely well in the government service, doing that through the government of Grenada and placing second in that program. So I've gone back to the Cipriani Labor College to retool and to refreshen and resharpen my skills. And Brother Grimes here was very fortunate also to get a scholarship from the Public Workers Union to help him in his field and line of work in corporate studies. I am doing industrial relations, and collective bargaining is one of the things that I have the opportunity to strengthen my skills and to be able to develop and harness my skills so that I'm able to be more effective for the membership. And I stand on the principle of working hard to ensure that our pension is secured, on the principle of ensuring that we continue that training and development and education of our membership, on the principle of ensuring that occupational safety and health becomes a priority within the Public Workers Union, because we know that we have a number of challenges throughout the public service, whereby a number of our ministries and departments suffer with poor air quality and with the standards, the proper standards within the environment. And we have to work on that. We formed a COVID committee during the COVID period, but that we have to continue working with the Ministry of Labor and the government of Grenada to ensure that we get that done. And trying to ensure that we do, giving our members information, keeping our members in the know, keeping our members very active as to what is happening within the public workers union is very critical. And this is one of the things that we want to ensure as a executive happens, and getting every executive member on board and keeping our executive united. Because if we have a united, strong executive, when our membership sees that they have a leadership that is together, a leadership that speaks with one voice, a leadership that works together, they are more in line and more prone to working with each other and working together to see the development and the growth of their union. Critical and important to us is that issue of our contract work and our members who are on contract. I feel the pain. Persons who are there for some 25 years. And Brother Adrian Francis actually opened up the bond of our union to be able to represent effectively these workers. And we want to do so. We want to ensure that we can support our members and help them in their quest to get permanent appointment, because it is not only about the members, it's about the institution safeguarding and protecting the institution of public service and ensuring that we have a public service that stands according to the Constitution of Grenada, and we do not have our employer violating our Constitution, but we must call on them to uphold the Constitution and to ensure they uphold the laws, the labor laws of Grenada, and training and developing our members to know their rights and to empower them.
Yes, Ms.
It's
Roberts.
critical.
Thank you so much for that closing. It is time for us to wrap up, but we will be watching. We will be watching
Thank
the
you.
space. I will be watching this space here from Washington D.C. And we certainly will be having a follow up. We want to hear from the new executive of the Public Workers Union, in as much as we also want to hear from the new executive of the Grenada Union of Teachers, led by a fellow parishioner of mine, Mr. Teacher Jude, out there from Pomerose. All right, folks, on this note, let me take this opportunity to thank all our panelists this morning, thank our viewers and listeners for a lot of your comments in the comment field, and thank everyone for joining us for another edition of the Bub Report. On behalf of the producers, let me thank you again and have a pleasant week.